content carried in here is suitable for general family viewing.
Good morning, viewers. Welcome to the KU TV. This is Teacher Manasseh, a teacher at the KBA group of schools, Kahawa West. And I welcome all of us to the Elimu program that runs from Monday to Friday for primary school and also high school, especially for class 8, primary school, and for high school it is for Form 4s. So today I'll be taking you through the English lesson, class 8, and I will be looking at sentences. Now, in any profession where serious communication is a mandate, like teaching, law, and business, you realize that communication is very key. And that is to say that whenever you make your presentation or you're communicating, there's a language that is used. And here today, I'm here just to put things very easy for candidates, especially the ones in class 8. But still, I'll be traversing the other sections. I'll be looking at the lower primary, middle, upper, and also the upper primary classes. So you realize that sentences, they emanate from words. If you put many words together, you come up with what we call a phrase. Then if you put many phrases together, you come up with what is called a clause. And then many clauses. A clause is comprised of a subject and a verb, which is so basic. Then when you put clauses together, you come up with the sentences. And then the sentences, as many as you use them, you come up with paragraphs. And many paragraphs put together, you come up with what we call a story. So today I want us to look at sentences, and to begin with, we will be defining what a sentence is. So a sentence is a group of words that expresses a complete thought. So whenever you use a sentence, there is that expression of a complete thought. And sentences always have a subject. So a sentence expresses a complete thought or idea. That is the basic meaning of a sentence. Whenever you want to put something across, we use sentences to communicate. And then we have said that a sentence expresses an idea or thought. Number 2, a sentence always has a subject So a sentence has a subject, then it also has what we call a verb. So these are the two components of a sentence to make it a complete thought. For example, you will have the subject, then the verb on this other end. I'm just using the very simple sentences here to bring the idea home. Number one, Owen is playing. This is a basic sentence. Owen is playing. Owen is the subject and the verb is playing. Number two, Anne is reading. In this example, Anne is a subject, reading is a verb. Another example, the pupils are playing. In this sentence, the pupils is a subject, and then are playing is a verb. Having said that, those are the basic examples I can use just to define what a sentence is, and it is as simple as that: a subject and a verb. I want us now to look at 4 types of sentences. 4 types of sentences. Four types of sentences. So the first type of a sentence I want us to look at what we call a declarative sentence. 4 types of sentences. The first one is called a declarative sentence. A declarative sentence is a sentence that makes a statement and ends with a full stop. This is a sentence that makes a statement and it ends with a full stop. This is what we call a declarative sentence. It is a sentence that makes a basic statement and it ends with a full stop. So as we continue, there's a number there. You can be sending your questions. I'll be responding to them in due course. And then I'll be giving examples of what we call declarative sentences. 1, it is called in July. It is called in July. This is an example of a declarative sentence. It is just a statement made and it ends with a full stop. Then number 2, Melvin likes football. Melvin likes football is also a declarative sentence, in that it is a statement made and it ends with a full stop. Another example I want us to have is this one. Another example of a declarative sentence. We are looking at types of sentences. COVID-19 is a global pandemic. COVID-19 is a global pandemic. That is also another example of a declarative sentence. Having said that, we move to another example of a sentence and this is called an interrogative sentence. Example number 2. An interrogative sentence, from the word interrogate. An interrogative sentence. This type of a sentence that interrogates makes a statement. An interrogative sentence is a sentence that seeks or asks questions, and normally they end with question marks. Interrogative sentences. Interrogative sentences ask questions. Whenever you want to interrogate, they ask questions. They ask questions, and normally they end with a question mark. They normally end with a question mark. So they seek out to interrogate. They seek out to ask, to inquire, and therefore they end with question marks. That is an interrogative sentence, and I want to give a few examples. An example of an interrogative question or sentence. Number 1, where is the baby? Where is the baby? This is an example of an interrogative sentence. Number 2, another example of interrogative sentence. Why is the sky? Why is the sky blue? Why is the sky blue is another example of an interrogative sentence. Another one, who is shouting at the gate, is an example of an interrogative sentence. Interrogative sentences seek out clarification by asking questions, by inquiring with the aim of wanting to know. Then we have another example of a sentence. We are looking at examples of sentences, and there are 4. Example number 3 is what we call, example number 3 of a sentence is what we call exclamatory sentence. An exclamatory sentence. An exclamatory sentence makes a very strong statement. This sentence makes a very strong statement. It makes a very strong statement in communication. An exclamatory sentence. Now, unlike the first one, where we talked about a declarative, where a statement is made and it ends with a full stop, and then we looked at number 2, exclamatory an interrogative sentence where it aims to seek answers, to ask and inquire. An exclamatory sentence, this one, it makes a strong statement. This one makes a strong statement, and in most cases they end with exclamation marks. That is why we have the word exclamatory. And with exclamation marks. And this is the sign of an exclamation mark. So for these types of sentences, exclamatory sentences, they are used to make strong statements, and especially they are used to show feelings. So there is that also element of expressing. They express feelings. For example, they can be used to express, one, surprise. They are used to express surprise. Whenever somebody is surprised, an exclamatory sentence is used to express their feelings. Number two, it can also be used to express anger. Whenever somebody is angry or disappointed, this exclamatory sentence is used to express their feelings. I want us to look at examples of exclamatory sentences. Like now we are staying at home because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So most of the time whenever we see the cabinet secretary and the Ministry of Health, whenever they come to address us, most of the time they use exclamatory sentences to express feelings, to express anger sometimes whenever people are not keeping distance, whenever people are not wearing masks in public places, whenever people are ignoring washing of hands and all that. The types of sentences used to express such disappointment are what we call exclamatory sentences. Here are examples of exclamatory sentences. Example number one, for instance, what long hair you have. What long hair you have is an example of an exclamatory sentence. Number two, what a kind thing to do. Is another example of an exclamatory sentence. Another one, example of exclamatory sentence, he fell with a thud. He fell with a thud is an example of an exclamatory sentence. They are used to show strong feelings. For example, surprise or anger. Then I want us to move to the last type of a sentence. And this sentence is called an imperative sentence. It is called an imperative sentence. Sentence number 4 of the types: an imperative sentence. What is an imperative sentence? An imperative sentence is a sentence that gives an order. An imperative sentence ends with an exclamation mark, just like exclamatory, if that order is very firm. So, imperative sentences, they give order. They give order or orders. Then they end with an exclamation mark. They end with an exclamation mark if the order is very strong. They are used to give orders, and an exclamation mark is used if that order is very strong. So having looked at the 4 types of sentences, I have spoken about a declarative sentence. These are sentences that make statements. Then we looked at interrogative sentences. They are the ones that are used to ask questions. Then we looked at exclamatory sentences. They are used to express emotions, either of anger or surprise. Then the last one is an imperative sentence, and we have said that for this sentence, they are used to give orders, and I'm going to give examples. For example, tell Teddy to come and mop the floor. That is an example of an imperative sentence. It is an order. Example of an imperative sentence. Number 1, tell Teddy to come and mop the floor. This is an order, so it does not have to end with an exclamation mark because it is not a strong order. Then number 2, go to your room. Unlike this first example given of an imperative sentence where an order is given and it looks light, you don't use an exclamation mark. But the second one is a strong statement. Go to your room. Go to your room. It ends with an exclamation mark. Maybe at home there, some of you are so jumpy, you don't stay indoors, and the Ministry of Health directives state that we stay indoors, of course, to avert the spread of the virus. So if you don't stay indoors, maybe your parents can tell you, go to your room as an order. That is an example of an imperative sentence. Another example, please leave. Please leave. This example 3, you don't use an exclamation mark because it's not that strong. You're just asking somebody to exit. You're asking somebody to leave, therefore you don't use an exclamation mark. And then the last sentence on the same, shut the door. Shut the door. This order is very strong. Therefore, somebody is being instructed to shut the door, and it's very serious. It could be there's an animal that wants to get into the house and devour people. So you don't take chances of saying, please shut the door. You know, the animal might come and we become lunch in this place. No, shut the door. It is a strong order, and that is it. So having said that, I want us to move to the next level. I want us to look at what we call verbs with objects in relation to sentences. Verbs with objects. Want us to look at verbs with objects, and then I will tell you what they mean. The other name for verbs with the objects, they are also called transitive verbs. Verbs with objects, they are also called transitive verbs. Verbs with objects. Now, the basic definition of a verb is an action or a doing word. For example, jump, an action word. Skip, cry, shout. Those are examples of verbs. So the basic definition of a verb again, a verb is an action or doing word. Whenever you want to express an action, we use verbs. For example, jump is a verb, speak is a verb, walk is a verb, right? They express action, or they are used to say what happens. Those are verbs. Then we'll be looking at an object later as I go by. So the subject of a sentence does something. Whenever we look at verbs with objects, we normally have what we call subject. The subject in a sentence is the doer. In other words, does the action. The subject in a sentence is the doer, the one doing the action or executing the action. Then we have what we call an object, because we are looking at verbs with objects. The object in a sentence receives the action of the verb. They receive the action of the verb. Remember that action, we said action or doing words. We are looking at verbs with objects or transitive verbs. For example, I'll be having something like a table. So let me use this other part so that it can be very clear to you, boys and girls at home, and those who have tuned. I know you are so many, and you are following very, very closely as you keep distance, and also as you wash your hands and follow the directives given by the Ministry of Health to avert COVID-19. So we have on this other side subject. Then at the center, we will be having what we call transitive verb. The subject, transitive verb, and finally on this side, we'll be having the object. Example, Alvin is reading a book. Alvin is reading a book. Verbs with objects. In this sentence, the subject is Alvin, and what Alvin is doing is reading. Reading is what we call transitive verb, and then the object here is a book. So Alvin is the subject, he is the doer, is the one doing the action here, which is a verb, is reading, and what is being read is an object, which is book. Verbs with objects. Number 2, mother likes her new dress. Mother likes her new dress. In example 2, mother is the subject, likes is the verb, which is transitive, and finally her new dress is the object. Another example, the dog caught the thief. The dog caught the thief. In this example, the dog is the subject and the dog is doing the catching. That act is a transitive verb, and finally what is being caught, the object there, is the thief. So those are examples of verbs with objects. In other words, they are also called transitive verbs. They are also called transitive verbs. But we have also other verbs that do not take objects. We call them verbs with no objects or intransitive verbs. Verbs with no objects. The other group, as we look at sentences this morning, are called verbs without objects. Verbs without objects or intransitive. Intransitive verbs. Unlike the first group, we said that for that group there is a subject, there is a verb, which is an action word, and finally an object. For this case, they do not have verb, they do not have objects. So we say verbs without objects do not take objects in their sentences. An object is not there. The way we have demarcated this one for transitive verbs, that they have the subject, there is a transitive verb, and finally an object. Verbs that do not have objects, they are just that way, and I'll be giving examples on the same. Some verbs do not have an object. A verb that does not have an object is called a transitive verb. A verb that does not have an object is called intransitive. They are called intransitive verbs. Actually, it is just the opposite of transitive. It is the opposite of transitive. An example: the moon is shining. This is an example of intransitive verb. You can see the moon is the object. I mean, the moon is the subject and there is no object. So this is the subject here, the moon. And then we have the verb here, is shining. And then the object is not there. An example of intransitive verb. Example number 2. The lady smiled. The lady smiled. In this case, the lady is the subject and smiled is the verb, and an object is not there. Another example of intransitive verb: Mr. Mzalendo walks to work. Mr. Mzalendo here is the subject and walks to work is a verb, therefore no object. So those are the two examples of verbs that we have in English whenever we talk about sentences. We have verbs without objects. They are called intransitive verbs, and they are also used in communication. And then we have verbs with objects. They are very commonly used. They are called transitive verbs. So having said that, I want us to look at other sentences. We have other groups called simple sentences. And this topic is cutting across all the sections, the preschool. We don't want to see learners using some funny sentences. For example, you are going where, you see, that kind of spoken English. I did do my work, mixture of verbs and all that. Whenever these learners speak and they come to school, they must go through systems that can help them speak good English. So I want us to look now at simple sentences, the basic ones where we can communicate in a very simple way so that we avert that. So we have simple sentences. And these sentences, a clause is a group of words that contain one subject and one verb. So for simple sentences, we have what we call a clause. They are made from what we call clause, and this clause has one subject, and one verb. This is a clause, and they are used to construct simple sentences. A clause, it contains one subject and one verb. So a sentence that contains one clause and one verb is called a simple sentence. So we say a simple sentence contains one subject and one verb. So whenever you construct sentences and you're using a simple subject, which is one, and you're also using a verb, which is one, that sentence is what we call a simple sentence. For example, the girls are playing netball. Examples: the girls are playing netball. This is an example of a simple sentence here. So the girls, this is the subject, and then are playing netball is a verb. Are playing, actually, is a simple, is one verb. Then number two, the sky was very clear. Another simple sentence: the sky was very clear is another example of a simple sentence. One subject and one verb. Another one: will you help me? Will you help me is another example of a simple sentence. Will you help me? It's a question. Will you help me? So that is an example of a simple sentence. You is the subject and help is the verb. Then we have another one, compound sentences. From simple, now we move to another example of a sentence, compound sentences. Unlike the first one where we said it has one subject and one verb, for compound sentences we can say that a compound sentence contains two clauses joined by a conjunction. Compound sentences contain two clauses joined by a conjunction. So these conjunctions can either be and, so, or, so that you join the first part and the second part to make it a compound sentence. I want to give an example of a compound sentence. We have said they have two clauses joined together by what we call a conjunction, a joining word. She opened her bag and packed her books. Okay. She opened her bag and packed her books. This is an example of a compound sentence. She opened her bag is the first clause, joined by and, then the next clause, packed her books. The other one, and the last example of a compound sentence, do you want coffee or you prefer lemonade? Do you want coffee or you prefer lemonade? It's a question. In this sentence, do you want coffee is the first clause, joined by a conjunction, or you prefer lemonade. That is an example of a compound sentence. So keep your questions coming. I'm going to respond to them in a short while here at KUTV. Keep your questions coming, and I'm going to respond to them in a short while. So one is called, this is Brenda from Kiambu, and you're asking, I am Brenda from Kiambu, what is imperative? I will respond to that. Then another one, teacher, when we say a verb is a doing word, is teaching also a doing word? That's a very good question. I want to begin by responding to Brenda. Teaching is a verb, it's an action. For example, what I'm doing right now, I am teaching. So teaching is a doing word. It is an action word. Then the question that Brenda asked about imperative is an order. It is to implore. When you want to instruct, sometimes we use orders. And the sentences that we looked at use an example of shut the door. That is an imperative. It is to implore, to ask something to do, to ask somebody to do something. I hope I'm very clear. Let me ask another one. Another person is saying, hi, Purity from Baringo. The words came to an end could be replaced with, maybe you resend your question, it's not very clear. And then another one, I would like to ask the employees who will dash paid for by the end of this week will speak to the manager about it. The employees who will dash paid for by the end of this week will speak to the manager about it. Answers have not been, not have been, have been not have been. What is considered in answering such a question? Now, in this kind of a question, you look at the statement, the employees who will, and then you look at the last bit of it. For example, this one says the employees who will dash paid for by the end of the week will speak to the manager about it. The correct answer is who will not have been paid. Because you see the second part says they will speak to the manager. So there is that act. They are supposed to be paid, but it could be their hindrances that make them not to be paid. So the correct answer is who will not have been paid. Another question, who will not have been paid, not have been paid. The correct answer there is D. Another person is saying, I am Mish from Baringo. Which sentence asks questions? Which sentence asks questions? Then another one, teacher, kindly explain the declarative statement again. Blessing from Baringo. Declarative statements, they are used just from the word to declare. Declarative statements. Let me get back to you in a short while about declarative statements or sentences. And this is somebody from Baringo. And I'm so much happy you are tuned from far and wide. A declarative sentence is just a statement. They make statements, and mostly they end with full stops. So they are basic statements ending with full stops. Those are examples of declarative sentences. Let me respond to the last question. Okay. Joy from Kayole, can a compound sentence have more than one conjunction? Yes, it can have more than one conjunction, but do not make it too long. They become very clumsy and they lose meaning. So thank you for watching. Let's keep here at KUTV. Keep safe at home. Let us make sure we are safe. We are waiting for you when the schools reopen. Thank you. God bless.
Sasa ni bora zaidi. Mwanzo mpya, mambo mapya. Msimu mwingine wa Boresha Kilimo unakuletea teknolojia ibuka, kilimo mseto, uongezaji thamani. Teknolojia dijitali ya mauzo inawezesha ufikiaji wa masoko. Sokomoko yako, mahangaiko yako ya kufikia